Thank you all for being here on this Thursday. I'm Kelsey Wiskirk and I'm WARP's Executive Director. And this is our monthly panel discussion program, Continuing Textile Traditions panel discussions. And today's theme is Follow the Thread. This is a panel discussion focused on textile tours and traditional crafts. And today we will travel virtually to Peru, Guatemala, Laos, and Vietnam through the sharing of our three presenters. So if this is your first time at a WARP program, then welcome to you. And for those who have been on programs previously, it's great to see you again. Weave a Real Piece is an international textile networking organization. We're a membership organization, and we have a number of programs, including our virtual programs, an in-person annual meeting each year, a grants program that supports artisans around the world. So if you'd like to learn more about WARP, our website is weavearealpiece.org, and I will put that into the chat after I introduce the first presenter. So again, welcome to you all. We're going to start with Maren Beck as our first of three speakers today. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Maren, and then she'll take over. So Maren is the co-founder of Above the Fray, traditional hill tribe art, which documents and supports the traditional textile arts and cultures of Laos and Vietnam. And Maren leads small group tours for textile enthusiasts to visit weaving families in the region and learn directly from the traditional textile artists. So Maren, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And hopefully this all does what it's supposed to do. It is marvelous. Okay, so oh, I've got a closed captioning thing up here. I don't know why. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Okay, hit my start button. Here we go. So as Kelsey said, I travel through Laos and Vietnam in the tours that I do and in most of the travel that I've been doing with textiles. And Laos is here in the orange, the light green is Vietnam. And we tend to stay in the northern section of that. So here the black line is kind of my main travel areas these days, though we've been all over Laos and Vietnam. And this is where my tour goes. We'll get into that a little later. So in northern Vietnam, I've been working predominantly with the Black Hmong and the Red Dao people. T on the left is Black Hmong, and on the right, Tamai is Red Dao, and you can tell from their clothing what ethnic group they're in. They still wear this clothing fairly regularly. This is Tsai. She is the mother of 6 daughters who are all incredibly amazing textile artists. We've known the family for 19 years. And I stay with them and we hang out and chat and swap ideas. It's great fun. Anyhow, Tsai here is walking through town, and if you look on her right hand, she's got hemp wrapped around her hand. She's been splicing it in order to be able to weave the fabric, and her left hand is indigo dyed. Here is T in front of some of the fields in the region. It's absolutely gorgeous in northern Vietnam. And this is T's aunt, who is showing off a piece of hemp that has been indigo dyed, very dark, and then waxed by rubbing it between a rock and a log. And the rock has beeswax on it and makes it very, very shiny. This is what they use for their vests. And it is not only waterproof, but also provides some good bling. In addition, they do a lot of batik in the region, not as much for the Black Hmong, but the Blue Hmong, Flower Hmong, other Hmong do a lot of batik. And the Black Hmong do use it for the women's jacket decorations. Here is T stirring up her indigo vat. She's just refreshed it with some more lye and indigo paste, and there's some pieces hanging over a bar getting ready to go into the next dye vat. So that's a lot of what the Hmong do. I mean, every Hmong person has a dye vat in their house. Under the Red Dao, they do predominantly embroidery on cotton, and it's silk hand embroidery on cotton. Those pants are all embroidered. The collar, the back jacket, the whole thing is embroidered. And not only that, they embroider from the back side. And here is one of the back apron pieces that I purchased from the weaver or the embroiderer. And it's just also a gorgeous landscape over in that village. Now we're heading into Laos. That was just a quick run through of the Vietnam groups that we work in. Laos is where my heart tends to be more here. This is the Samta Valley, and this is where a lot of the gorgeous silk weaving comes from. Here's a bunch of our best buddies from Samta. Bung Keo and Lun are married. Bung Keo is Tai Dang, so he's red Thai. Lun is Lao Lum. So she is Buddhist and matrilineal. He is animist and patriarchal. And nonetheless, they managed to have the most amazing marriage ever. Put and Suk and Mai grew up together. Put and Suk really loved weaving and dyeing. They're experts at producing pattern templates so that people could weave complex patterns, and they are the premier natural dyers in the region. Malatong didn't like weaving, didn't like dyeing. She loved school. She went on and got her degree and then got a master's in rural economic development in Japan. So even from a teeny little town, people can go anywhere. These textiles are stunning. There's a sukuvi with a man-woman healing cloth she wove, same pattern, both sides, different coloration. Suk's large shaman cloth. This is my chom. She's 8 years old in this picture, and that's the first piece we bought from her. She's a phenomenal weaver at this point. And then the older people often will sell their textiles that they have woven when they were young children that they used. This was a mosquito net border, and nobody else in her family wanted to use it anymore, so she chose to sell it to me. And it's just lovely to be able to have access to these gorgeous pieces, all hand woven. This is an ikat skirt. There's a lot of those that are used for daily wear, and textiles to keep the baby wrapped up and warm are filled with mythological creatures that provide spiritual protection. Shoulder cloths are also part of the daily wear for women, for not only wearing to temple, but also for basi ceremonies, other special ceremonies. And this is a textile woven by this Tai Dang woman who she wove it when she was a teenager. It's a funeral cloth that is used to wrap the coffin. And you can only use a textile that was woven within your family for your family. Her granddaughter wove a new one. So the family's using the new one. And so she wanted to sell this because no other family can use it. It has to be woven within the family. So this is what a lot of the villages look like. Very small, rural, but they are also developing. This is Suksakon's guest house, the natural dyer. They use the Bombyx mori silk. They will farm the mulberry trees, weave the baskets, breed the silkworms to get new propagation. Here's some baby silkworms just hatching. Here's about halfway through their process. And now they are spinning their cocoons. Here's cocoons laid out. And in Laos, in this region of Laos, they do not spin silk, they reel it. And the cocoon unrolls basically like a ball of yarn. And here's the tools that she uses to do the reeling. And here's another woman reeling the yellow silk. These Bombyx mori produce both yellow and white silk. Natural dyeing. Suksakon, a best natural dyer, is not weaving or not dyeing in a sterile environment. Instead, there's a construction project going on. There's a road, water buffaloes and chickens going by. She's heating the dyes on a fire stove. And she produces the most fabulous colors. Here's some more dyes. This is Duobanga grandiflora, which creates this gorgeous gold, ham, a bright yellow. And then when you put the ham into the lac, you get a neon orange. It looks so cami, it's amazing. And this is another one of the roots they use. It's called makbao that makes that gorgeous color. There's indigo, of course, and when the skeins are done, they hang out on the road to dry. Another thing that is done in the region is people don't have store-bought warping tools. They don't have store-bought looms. Everything is made by hand. And it doesn't matter if it's slightly cattywampus. It still winds a warp just fine and dandy. The looms are lifted out into the middle of an area to be able to warp them. Here's a couple young women working on warping this loom. This is the most amazing part of the Lao textile process. And that are the Lao Thai textile process. And that is, this is a pattern template, these vertical heddles, and each string that goes across the heddles is one row of pattern. And if you look closely, you can actually see what pattern is coming up on that pattern template. The weaver will, and here's my chum when she's 12. She was the one who was 8 when we bought our first textile. Now she's 12 here. She takes the thread, separates the vertical heddles, stores that thread back under the open heddles underneath so she can use it again, and then does the weaving. By the way, she's wearing her school uniform here because we caught her during her lunch break in school. And then the hand picking of the colors happens once the shed has been lifted. So I wanted to show you guys how the weaving is done. Just one simple video here. This young woman is weaving a skirt. It's a very simple pattern, sufficient that she is able to use pattern sticks instead of threads to be able to create the shed. And here she's just finishing hand picking one row. And then here comes the good stuff. So the pattern template has these sticks or strings. She pulls one down, separates the vertical heddles, stores the stick down below again, keeping the pattern, lifts the heddles that are in front or that were separated by that stick and puts in a sword to hold the pattern. Then she does a row of plain weave to support the ground and then turns up the sword, which creates the shed. And then she hand picks the colors. The colors are in her head. There's nothing that tells her what colors to use. That is strictly up to her and what she wants to do. So that's the magic that makes these textiles. Lots of different kinds of looms, lots of different ways of weaving, but the children all grow up with their moms and aunts and grandmas weaving around them. And so I swear they learn by osmosis rather than anything else. And so this here is a young woman who has just started weaving. This is her first week of weaving and her grandma's teaching her. They also do ikat in the region, but the ikat tends to come from different villages. They specialize. So I mentioned earlier, there are motifs woven into the textiles, and they are motifs of spiritual creatures that provide protection, spiritual protection for the wearer, and allow the shaman to be able to use those creatures to access the ancestor world, to bring back an ancestor spirit to help with whatever healing is going on. My husband and I wrote a book about this, but this particular region. If you're interested, contact me and you can get it from us, signed and all that. So I don't know where I am on my timing because my phone closed. Oh dear, I'm at the end. Okay.
Okay, Maren.
I lead textile workshops really quickly here. 20 days and nights, going to Vietnam and Laos and going to the places you've seen. We work with Hmong, Yao, Lao, Thai, and Katu traditions and others. Small group, 8 people max. You get to take advantage of my 19 years of relationships with these artists, so you can jump right into the culture, right into the people, and you're welcomed with open arms. And we do hands-on workshops so that you get tangible understanding of how to make the textiles, and give you a greater understanding and appreciation for their arts. I'm going to quickly show some pictures from the tours. You do wax resist batik, propagate indigo, do Hmong embroidery and Yao embroidery. Here's one of the guest houses we stay. And here's some of the Yao people who teach us how to do their embroidery. You hand reel silk. You get to play yourself with the silk reeling and also making natural dyes. Here's some of the dyes we made in one year, one workshop. Then we move on to cotton. There's bow carding using traditional tools in the region, and you roll your own punis and then tie your own ikat with the hand spun organic cotton. And then Katu backstrap weaving, where the beads are woven in on the weft thread. The family's a kick in the pants. You'll love this part. And then we weave our own Lao textile using naturally dyed silks. And everybody, even those who were not textile people, were able to come home with their own piece. A couple other things we go by: basket weaving villages. You get great local food. Some things a little funky like chicken intestines and ant egg soup, but it's good. Do a cooking class and get to hang out at a delicious waterfall on the last day. So if you're interested, have any questions about any of the arts you've seen, please contact me. I can talk way longer than this.
Thank you, Maren. That was fantastic. Very, very inspiring and great to see the weaving process. I put your website in the chat for anyone who's interested, and there's Marin's email address. We'll also send that out in a follow-up email. So great. Thank you, Marin. Okay, I also forgot to mention at the beginning, if you have any questions for any of the presenters, please just put those in the chat, and at the end we'll have time for Q&A. Great. Okay, so next I'm going to introduce Carol Hayman. Carol leads tours in Peru. On these tours, participants visit museums and craftspeople in Lima, then fly to the mountain town of Ayacucho to visit with artisan families. These families work in a variety of crafts, including tinsmithing, silver and gold filigree, and of course, weaving and dyeing. So Carol, thank you for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. That was a great introduction. So I'm in Austin, Texas, and I want to thank Warp for putting on this panel, and also all of the people who participated. I had no idea so many people would come. So I'm going to start screen sharing here. And let's see. Okay, here it is, I think.
Great.
Yeah, let me move this out of the way. Okay. Okay, so I was a professor of anthropology at Austin Community College, and I had a study abroad program where I took students to Peru. And then after the study abroad program ended, I did a few trips with people of other groups, the sister cities of Austin, for example, and other groups of people. And those were kind of designed to be more special interests. For example, on one of the tours, some firemen came along and they wanted to visit a fire station. So that's what we did, that kind of thing. And my main interest is crafts. So that's what I'm going to show you here, that different craft things that we did. Okay, let's see, wait, now okay, so here's a map of Peru. And down here is Lima. Let's see, here's Lima right here. And basically to get anywhere else in Peru, you have to fly from Lima to the place and then back. So so here's Ayacucho right here. And if you want to go on to Cusco, for example, which is here, you have to fly back to Lima and then get a flight to Cusco. You can't go, they don't have interconnecting within country flights. But as you can see, Ayacucho and Lima are not very far away, but to go by bus, it takes about 20 hours, something like that. So a flight is like an hour, so it's much more time effective to fly. So that's what we did. And also I want to mention that the archaeology in Peru is absolutely fantastic, of course, and there are many fabulous archaeological sites. So that's why going to the museums is essential, because there's so much of that. So I just wanted to mention that. So my interest is in crafts, and here is Ayacucho is one of the centers of crafts, but everywhere in Peru has beautiful crafts. This is just one of the places that has gorgeous things. And a lot of the people there still wear their traditional clothing, as in this example here. And then this is a typical street scene here of Ayacucho. One thing that they're famous for is their bread. And so here's a bakery where it's being made. And this bread is so delicious that people who used to live in Ayacucho and have moved to Lima, when they come back, they fly back to Lima with giant bags of bread. So you'll see them on the plane holding these giant bags of bread on the plane trip. But it is really delicious bread. And then here's a woman in the country who is separating the wheat from the chaff here. And you see a lot of scenes like that when you're traveling around. Then in the main square, there are these women who sell ice cream, and they dress up in these costumes to attract customers, and they're really quite beautiful. So they're around the square. And so here you can see some examples of their clothing there. And then also on the square, they have these newspaper vending kiosks that are designed to look like the retablos that this town is also very famous for. And so you'll see these motifs everywhere. And here's, we visit one of the retablo makers. And here he is. And when I was reviewing these slides to put together this presentation, I noticed on the table here, here's a picture of him from one of my previous visits. So when I go back to visit the artisans, I take prints of the pictures of them. They're always really happy for that. So here, these are retablos right here. So some of them have little doors on that they open up. Others are always open right here. And many are of religious scenes. This one here is a parade, and Peruvians in general love parades, and so they like to depict those as well. And then this style of cross here is reproduced in many different media. So here it is in wood, and you'll see it in a minute in other media too. So, and then they also make these dolls. And notice that the motif here is very similar to the motif on this door here. And you'll also see it on the doors to the retablos that open up. It's like a flower. And then here's another retablo maker, Malbuyuyan. He was from Ayacucho and left the violence that they had in the latter part of the 20th century and settled in Lima, and I visited him there. But he maintains the same kind of style. And so here are some of the figures that he puts in his retablos. Very beautiful work.
Carol, while you're discussing retablos, can you, there's a question in the chat. Can you tell us a little bit about the significance or the story of the retablos?
Well, they're mainly religious. And so they have little doors that open and you see a tableau of a religious scene. But also now they're doing secular ones too. So it could be any kind of daily scene, people working in the fields or mermaids or, just anything. But it's usually like a little box that you open up. So that's why it makes such a good cabinet for storing your newspapers if you're selling newspapers, that style. So I hope that answered the question there.
Thank you.
And then here's one of the jewelers that we visit. So you can see his setup here. Here's his workstation, and it looks very primitive. But the kind of jewelry he makes is really lovely. It's beautiful silver filigree, and he's won a lot of national awards for his work. And here's one of his, actually a turkey here that is a kind of a typical design, but you can see how intricate the work is. And he actually pulls this part is made of wire, and he actually pulls the wire himself. He doesn't buy the wire already made. So, and then another family that we visit makes tinware. And so here they are in their family workshop, and the whole family, mother, father, kids, aunts, uncles, grandma, everybody works in the workshop. And here they all are. So they use recycled tin like he is using here, or cutting the tin out of large sheets of tin that's unused previously. So they make candle holders and mirrors and those crosses. Somewhere here we have. So these are pictures of the workshop and their organization. So here's another one of those crosses, only in this case it's in tin instead of wood, like the one that we saw in the previous pictures. So here's the gift shop that they have. So these make great presents, and they're not so heavy, so you can fill your suitcase up with them and take them back, which I have done. So then I know everyone's waiting to see the weavers, so I have some pictures. And the neighborhood in Ayacucho is Santa Ana, where the weavers are. And Ayacucho is the name of a town, but it's also the name of a state too. So Ayacucho is the capital of the state of Ayacucho. So here's some cochineal dyed yarn drying in the sun. You can kind of see what the countryside looks like as well. And here's one of the workshops. And they welcome visitors, of course. Here's a spinning wheel. They don't use hand spun too much anymore, but some people still do it. And here's one of the looms. And I included a number of pictures so you could see. They look really primitive, but they actually produce really beautiful work. I don't know why that shoe is there. But, so here's one of the looms with work being worked on it. And here's another one, another weaver at work. So you can see his technique, two heddles there. Here's some of the work on display. And then these are all looms in the back that you can see back here. So there's about 8 looms in this workshop. And then these are typical motifs. And they are actually from archaeological sites, pictures of the gods here. These are actually severed heads, what they're depicting here. The decapitator god. So, and then they, besides those kinds of weavings, they make pillows and bags and purses, all different kinds of things. And then they do their own dyeing. So sometimes they use natural dyes, sometimes they use synthetic dyes. And that's what she's doing here. And there's the beautiful colors of that. And then I wanted to include a few pictures of the women in the Colca Canyon because their outfits are so beautiful. So, and here's an alpaca. And here's some vicuñas. And they're all in the camel family. And all of them produce wool that's used in weaving. So these women here are famous for their machine embroidered outfits, and so that's what she's wearing. Here they are for sale in the market. And the hats are part of the outfit as well. Different styles of hats. So here she is with her sewing machine, sewing adding the embroidery to the cloth. And here it is for sale. So these are purses and eyeglass holders and hats and things like that. And here's 2 women in the market. So you can see they dress like this every day. Most people do in this area. And then this is a picture of Ayacucho, the main square at night, and it's quite beautiful. So, so that's it. I think I got just at 10 minutes. So here is my information. If you want to see more of my pictures, that's the website and that's my email address. So I'm not doing any tours at the moment, but if enough people ask me or tell me they want to go on one, I could probably get a group together and it would be fun. So that's my info. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. That was wonderful. There are a couple of questions for you in the chat. I think we'll just go ahead and address them. So Martha asks, is the weaving done primarily by men or do women weave too?
Women weave too, yeah. I would say probably men are more visible, but the family that I showed you, the girl who was sitting there doing the embroidery, she weaves as well. So yeah.
Okay. And then Susan asks, is there any felting? She bought a pair of felt slippers, which she loved.
Yes. Where do they do that? Let me think. I've seen it too. They also, the hats that they embroider, those are felted hats. But I don't know what part of the country they're from. Maybe Huancayo, I'm not sure. Yeah. I have seen them, but I don't know where.
Great. Well, thank you, Carol. That was fantastic. So we can, if you stop screen sharing, then I'm going to go ahead and introduce Katie. So, okay, I'd like to welcome Katie. Katie Naki will be speaking about Mayan Hands, which organizes tours to visit and learn from their artisan partners in the Guatemalan highlands. These tours include demonstrations of numerous region-specific weaving techniques, needle felting, ikat, basket weaving, and more. So Katie, thank you for being here to represent Mayan Hands today. And you're muted.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm the operations manager at Mayan Hands. I've been working here for about 3 years. And we actually had kind of a long pause in our tour program because of the pandemic and just relaunched it this February. And I was able to go to Guatemala for the first time on that tour. So it was really exciting after working with our products for a while here in our warehouse in Albany. I want to start out just by talking about Mayan Hands as an organization. So we are a fair trade nonprofit organization working with 17 different artisan groups in the Guatemalan highlands. All the artisan groups are made up of Maya women, and they each have their specialties in different traditional and non-traditional crafts. So as far as the non-traditional crafts go, we work with pine needle basket weaving groups and wool needle felting groups. And then for the more traditional textile techniques, we work with weavers who work on backstrap loom weaving, including 2 types of regionally specific brocade, tapestry, petal loom weaving, foot loom weaving, haspe or ikat dyeing and weaving, cinta weaving, ronda embroidery, and crochet. So a lot of different textile expertise going around at Mayan Hands. We have decades-long partnerships with some of the groups that we work with. We're almost 35 years old at Mayan Hands, and some of these groups have been working with us from the beginning. So in our commitment to that partnership, we offer programming that includes scholarship funding for girls, especially the daughters of some of the weavers, growing healthcare program, and programs for artisan training and development as well. So we're not really a tour company, but we offer tours to supplement all of that programming. And then this photo here is of our staff, including our 3 full-time members of our US team, and then we have 7 full-time team members in Guatemala. I think only 6 of them were here this day, but this was our first ever team retreat in Guatemala following our tour in February. I do want to share our tour objectives. So before every tour, we send these tour objectives out to kind of help outline our philosophy. We want to encourage a more ethical approach to tourism. We'll talk to tour participants about informed consent around photography, things like that. So these objectives are kind of just to help set the tone. So what we want to do is to offer you meaningful opportunities to connect with Mayan Hands artisan partners and staff in a cross-cultural exchange, to offer a platform for our talented artisan partners to share their skills and stories with an appreciative community of international visitors. So for some of these groups, this is the only time they're meeting people from outside of Guatemala or maybe even outside of their own communities. So it can be a really special experience for our artisan partners as well. And then to provide a rich experience of Guatemala, Maya culture, craft traditions, and context around that. To give you an overview of what our tour looks like, it's an 8-day tour. It's co-led by our executive director, Madeline Creeder Carlson, and members of our Guatemala staff who would accompany you throughout the tour. Throughout the tour, you would visit artisan groups in their communities that partner with Mayan Hands, as well as craftspeople outside of the Mayan Hands organization. On this last tour in February, we visited 4 of our artisan partner groups and heard about both their techniques with Mayan, for the work that they do with Mayan Hands, some of their side projects, their history as an artisan group, and their experience with Mayan Hands. And then they also might share experiences with our programmings, especially the scholarship. And in terms of the health program, we heard a lot about eye exams that we conducted over the last year or so. It's worth mentioning that while you're in artisan communities, you might be able to do a craft with the artisans, but craft learning is not primarily the focus of our tour, maybe less so than some of the other tours that you're hearing about or other textile tours that you've participated in. We also were able to visit artisans outside of our organization. So we visited a weaving cooperative called Oshilhu Baats in Santiago Atitlan. And we also visited an organic coffee cooperative called Lagos in San Juan La Laguna, which was kind of a different experience from looking at craft specifically. You would Along the way, we'd encourage you to purchase directly from artisans. So we try to set up some opportunities for that. For example, we were able to purchase directly from this weaving cooperative that we visited. And then we also organized an artisan expo where we invited artisans from some of the communities, or actually from, I think, all of the communities that we partnered with, to both do demonstrations of their techniques and then also to sell directly to tour participants some of the work that they had on hand, which included seconds, things that Mayan Hands didn't accept but had ordered, as well as personal projects, just other crafts that they were working on. One example I can think of is some of the crochet artisans were selling banana leaf woven mats that they had made. So it was a chance to see some of the other things that our artisan partners are working on that we don't normally get to see here because they're not Mayan Hands products. Another thing you would do on the tour is visit other nonprofits. We also encourage cultural sharing experiences with our artisan partners. So we visited a nonprofit restaurant called Ama de los Colores, which employs people with disabilities. That was something that we kind of put a focus on the tour. And then as far as cultural sharing goes, we did a traditional temazcal. It's a Maya sauna in one of our artisan partner communities. And then we also shared a meal with that community, as well as another artisan partner group that we had visited where needle felting is the craft focus there. Also, along the way, you would get a chance to explore Maya cultural sites such as Iximche and visit Antigua, a UNESCO World Heritage City. So I have a map here just kind of outlining where you would go on the tour. So we start in Guatemala City over here in the easternmost point, just kind of as a way to group everybody before we head out. And then you'd start traveling east by bus all the way up to Tecpan, which is kind of this northeastern area, both to visit Iximche and possibly one of our artisan partner groups. There's a basket weaving group there that is one of our oldest partnerships, and you would be likely to visit them. And then you would travel even further east out to Panajachel, which is located on Lake Atitlan. It's this huge crater lake, and a lot of our artisan partner groups are located around the lake. So some of the places you would visit would be out from there. And then you would travel all the way back east. Oh, sorry, I think I was saying east, I meant west. You travel back east toward Antigua, and then finally back to Guatemala City to wrap up the tour. One thing I want to do is just share one of my favorite days from this last day, or this last tour in February, which again was my first trip to Guatemala. We were based in Panajachel, again on Lake Atitlan. So here's a picture of the lake. It's blue, beautiful, very scenic. And one of the best ways to get around is to take water taxis or lanchas. So we basically picked up a lancha in Panajachel, traveled across the lake to the city of Santiago Atitlan, where we walked up the docks and hopped in the back of these pickup trucks, which is kind of a typical way to get around while you're in that city, or really in the highlands. And we traveled to the home of one of our artisan partners there. I just want to mention there's like a ton of artwork anywhere you go in Guatemala. There are a lot of murals. I think everywhere I visited, I saw murals on the buildings. In Santiago Atitlan specifically, there's this Ruta de Murales, and you can just kind of walk around along this route and see different murals. This one that depicts birds, I think is really interesting. In Santiago Atitlan, the Mayan language traditionally spoken there is Tzutujil. And the Tzutujil name for Santiago is Tsiquinhai, which actually translates to House of Birds. So you'll see a lot of bird imagery and motifs throughout the artwork there and in the weaving as well. So I just wanted to mention that in this photo. So while we were at our artisan partner's house, we were welcomed to the home of a woman named Micaela. And we heard about kind of the history of Santiago Atitlan. They told us a little bit about Tzutujil culture, how the group in this community first got involved with Mayan Hands and kind of the development of their work and the work that they're doing now. They talked to us about traditional dress, which a lot of Maya people are still wearing. So on the right, we have a picture of some of our tour participants that they actually dressed in traditional dress. So the men are wearing these pants that are very typical of Santiago Atitlan. They have these brocade stripes, and sometimes you'll see bird embroidery on the pants as well. They're wearing woven belts and also, in one case, a woven headband scarf. And then more modern style would be to wear a hat. And then the women are wearing hand-woven huipiles that are also, they have kind of a brocade grid that's filled in with this really intricately embroidered bird imagery on both of these two huipiles. And then the skirts that the women are wearing are called cortes. They're woven on a floor loom. And then the headdress that the women are wearing is called a tocoyal, and it's a traditional headdress that's a type of cinta that is wrapped around their heads and worn this way. We got to see two types of weaving demonstrations. First, Micaela here showed us how she makes, this is a tapestry coaster. It is a Mayan Hands product, and she just kind of did a demonstration of how she weaves this particular product. I think she said she keeps count kind of, but does it from memory and from looking at the motif of a sample. So in the end, this will have a couple of rabbits on it. So it was really cool to see her working. And then I just have another angle of her floor loom. You can see Micaela is not wearing shoes in the photo on the left. That was one thing she pointed out to us, that, you know, the first thing you should do is take off your shoes, because you can just feel the tension a little bit better that way when you're barefoot. So that was a detail that I would not have thought of, as I'm not a weaver myself. And then on the right, we also got a demonstration of backstrap loom weaving from one of our artisan partners. This is a woman named Concepcion. This was just a personal project that she was working on. And it's hard to tell because the photo isn't very close up, but it had a really beautiful and profuse hospe motif with ducks on it. So just a really nice example of that. And then before we left this community, we kind of rounded out this really exciting morning of demonstrations and cultural sharing with testimonials from two scholarship recipients in the community. Our host, Micaela, who has finished her education and is still weaving with Mayan Hands, as well as running a pharmacy in her community, and her niece, who I think is kind of finishing up her education at this point. And then that afternoon, we headed over to another organization. This is not a Mayan Hands partner, but just another organization in Santiago Atitlan. They're called Oshlahu Baats. They're a family weaving cooperative. It's not the same as Oshlahu Baats, but I do think that it's the same base word. So they welcomed us into this courtyard. You can see there's like a tree growing up through the courtyard, and they had laid out all of these different examples of their weaving. There were scarves and cortes and huipiles. And we were just kind of surrounded by these gorgeous textiles. And there they talked to us more about backstrap loom weaving and the tradition of Maya spirituality and its connection to backstrap loom weaving. That there's this idea of kind of an energy flowing from the weaver up through the weaving itself, through a tree or whatever means the loom is tied up to kind of keep that tension back to the earth and back to the weaver. So there's this like beautiful cycle of energy going through this particular piece of weaving. And then we also heard a little bit more about Santiago Atitlan, a little bit about the culture there from this group. On the right, I have an example. This is actually something that I got in this community. It's just a table runner that they wove here, but it has this really beautiful bird embroidery that's kind of typical of this city. We also got to see a hospe tying demonstration while we were there. So they didn't actually dye the hospe in front of us, but you can kind of see the rack that they use to run out the thread and start tying knots to work on that hospe, or sometimes called ikat. And then on the right here, I have a picture of an example of hospe being woven at this cooperative that has a really profuse motif. They just did incredible work. And then here is an example. We also got a demonstration of floor loom weaving. One thing they talked about while we were at this cooperative are the traditional roles of men and women as weavers. So more traditionally, women would be weaving on a backstrap loom, and then men would be weaving on the floor looms and making cortes for women to wear. So I think this is a corte being woven. And again, you can kind of see the hospe there, see that it's laid out on the warp, and then a kind of a close-up of this really profuse hospe motif. And then after that, we also had an opportunity to purchase directly from the artisans in that group. So it was really exciting. We do have an upcoming tour. Our next tour is scheduled for November 16th to the 24th, this fall, 2024. It's the week before Thanksgiving, so you'd be back in time for the holidays in the US. We haven't had a ton of traction for this tour yet, so we're going to keep registration open till the end of this month, but we do have tentative rescheduled dates for March of 2025. If you have questions, you can feel free to contact us. You can email us at info@myandhands.org or give us a call. But if you are looking to sign up, our registration is on the tour page on our website. We also have a sample itinerary there. And we hope to see you on our tour.
Great. Thank you, Katie. And I did share that direct link to the tour information in the chat when Katie first started talking. So great. Well, this was very inspiring. I welcome questions in the chat. Please share any questions you have for any of the speakers. And Katie, we'll start with, there's one in here from Vicky. A question for you asking, is there a national umbrella organization for the many artisan groups in Guatemala that you know of?
I personally don't know. Somebody there might be someone on the call who can answer this question better than I can. Our partner artisan groups are not like technical cooperatives. That's the one thing I understand, is that there are like bureaucratic cooperatives in Guatemala, but our partner groups are kind of just informally set up groups.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Actually, Katie, they are formally set up, but not as cooperatives. They're associations.
Thank you, Donna. I was hoping you would chime in.
And I don't think there is a national weavers movement that would love to incorporate every weaver in the country, but they aren't all signed on. So no, there's not an umbrella organization for all those.
yes, thank you, Deborah. And we actually had a really great panel with some of the weavers in Guatemala who are involved in the weavers movement a couple of years ago. So I'll see if I can locate that and drop that into the chat as well. So, okay, thank you for answering that. So again, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. While we wait for attendee questions, Marin and Carol, I have a question for both of you. You gave such great information about the weavers that you visit, the various artisans, and both of you as individuals, you know, being welcomed into homes and really having formed close relationships with the communities that you visit and take tour groups to. I would love for you to share about, you know, how that started, how that relationship started, or how those relationships were built. So Marin, maybe you can start. Oh, and you're muted. Let's see.
Somehow I think the weaving gods were smiling at us when we landed in Laos and Vietnam, and we managed to, as our first guide in Vietnam, ended up with one of the 6 sisters of the family I mentioned, and we just kept going back because the textiles were so fabulous and the people were so fabulous. And we made an effort to connect with people. When we travel, we try to find out more about who the people are, what their cultural beliefs are, how that translates into the textiles. We don't travel passively, and we would travel through trying to find places where people make things for themselves to use, because that's where you get the most fun connections and where you really, you know, get to experience the culture. And so that's what it all evolved from. And once we started traveling and then kept going back, and then started the textile business where we purchase from these artisans and sell their textiles in the States, that then maintained the relationship. And we're all just good friends at this point. As a matter of fact, the Hmong family, the 6 sisters call me second mom now. And I mean, most people don't show up 25 times in 19 years and hang out with you every time. And that's sort of part of what has happened. Same thing in Laos. And then some of the Lao artisans from Santa, we helped them apply for and get into IFAM. And then they came and visited us at our home in Eugene. And we took them around, took them to the coast, took them to the mountains. They got to see snow. I mean, all the silly things that we have here that's so different from there. And those kinds of things have really created strong connections.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Marin. So Carol, I'd love to hear. Oh,
I was saying, and my Lao friends say that I'm half Lao and they don't know how it happened. Other than one of them, when they were putting together a Lao loom we have in our house and doing a bossy ceremony for it, one of them said, you know, I think what happened is there was this huge storm and we were children way up in the clouds and the storm blew and blew and 3 of us ended in Laos and 2 of you ended in America. And when you came to visit, we were finally all back together again and we were family in the beginning. And so that, I love that
That's
cultural
nice.
spiritualism that comes throughout all of Laos, no matter what the ethnic group. So anyhow, I'll shut up now. Carol, your turn.
Thank you, Marin.
Well, I would agree that it's just going back. So I haven't been to Peru nearly as many times, but I have been there quite often. And I haven't always been back to the same places either, but going back over and over again is how you make friends with people. And so I would take lots of pictures of them. And then the next time I'd come, I'd bring them pictures of them. And they were always really happy to receive those. So I was always looking for new places to take students to. So in Lima, I made friends with artists and craftspeople, and there was an organization there, Bridge of Hope, which is actually one of Warp's sister organizations, because I get them I pay for their membership every year, and so we visited their artisans, and I've just done that just over and over again. So not as much depth, but a huge variety of different kinds of things, and more than once is the way to do it. Yeah. So those are my 2 cents about it.
Thank you, Carol. I really appreciate that. Katie, I have a question for you. You mentioned a couple of times the scholarship program for Mayan Hands, and would you mind sharing more information tell us what the scholarship program is or what it sponsors?
Yeah, so we run a scholarship program. I think we also get grant funding from the Maya Educational Foundation. And it's basically to encourage girls to go all the way through school. A lot of girls tend to drop out and start working to help support their families. So there's a real focus on helping girls finish their educations. I think every artisan community that we visited during this last tour, we heard from at least one scholarship recipient, if not more than one. Some were kind of right in the middle of their education, some had finished it. But it's basically just to focus on giving the daughters of our artisan partners, or even the artisan partners themselves, like I mentioned, Micaela, an opportunity to go back to school, finish an education, and kind of pursue whatever career they would like as a professional.
Great. Thank you for sharing more information. That's fantastic. I also want to share that if you don't have the chat open, Robin has shared another resource that may be of interest to some people on the call. There's a tour group called the Women's Travel Tribe for women over 50, small group travel with a focus often on textiles and cultural experiences. So there's a website there if anyone's interested that you can pull out of the chat. So thank you, Robin, for sharing that. We have time for another question or two if anyone has one. You're also welcome to just unmute and ask your question if you like.
I was going to mention that Erica, oh gosh, I just blanked on your last name, Erica Lewis, who is on this chat, came on my tour last year. So if any of you want to find out from another Warpy what it was really like, get a hold of Erica. She can fill in the details.
Great.
Right? I just volunteered you, sorry.
She's on here somewhere, or she
Yes, I
was.
saw her earlier.
And also Mary Kissel is on the call and says that she was on the tour with Mayan Hands that Katie was sharing images of. So that's great. And I see Karen, you're waving your hand. Please go ahead.
I have 2 questions. I see a lot of people there with gray or white hair. I'm 81 and I'm relatively healthy, I think. I can't walk very, very far. And I'm wondering if any of these tours can accommodate people my age. And then the second thing is my particular interest is in embroidery. And I'm wondering if there are any tours with a special focus on embroidery.
Well, I can say that this year I had an 82-year-old on my tour, and last year an 83-year-old on the tour. I've also had 21-year-olds. You do need to be able to walk a mile comfortably on uneven surfaces, but we're not trekking, we're not doing speed walking. People tended to have a bigger problem with sitting and doing workshops so much, and they'd have to get up and stretch in between.
Yeah.
That's quite doable. It is, yeah, transportation is always available. If we're doing a longer walk through a village and you say, I'd rather just ride to the next spot, you can do that.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd say it's about the same for a Mayan Hands tour. From what I can remember, I think the longest you would have had, we had like one steep hill to get up to one of our artisan partners' homes. That was a little bit more difficult and there was really no getting around it. But it wasn't a long walk. It was just one steep hill that was unpaved. But there are a lot of alternative options based on what you want to do or your ability. We had like an optional hike up a mirador, but it wasn't something that everybody had to do on this last tour, that kind of thing. So you can kind of pick and choose.
Thank you.
And in regards to the embroidery question, I know we saw machine embroidery in Carol's presentation. Katie, is there any embroidery on the Mayan Hands tour that's seen? I know some embroidery is done in the communities.
I would say it wasn't really a focus of the tour. It's something that we did see a lot of, especially in Santiago Atitlan, which is that day that I focused on, because it is so traditional on the Huipiles. But it's not a particular focus. It's something that Mayan Hands artisan partners have done in the past, but have kind of moved away from based on market demand. Like I think our oldest basket weaving group originally did embroidery for Mayan Hands, but now has moved on to basket weaving. So it's around, but it's not necessarily a focus of the tour.
And on my tour, we do two embroidery workshops, one from the Hmong and one from the Zhao. And it's two of the harder workshops that we do, but it's entertaining. And if you're an embroiderer, you probably would enjoy them. But it's two of like 15 different workshops we do.
Thank you. With Guatemala, I first visited Guatemala before you were born, probably in the 1960s. And their huipils have incredible embroidery, which I always assumed was hand embroidery. Is it now machine embroidery?
It really depends. We on this last tour, and I don't know that it's necessarily something that we'll do on future tours, we went to the market in Chichicastenango, and there you could see a lot of machine embroidery on huipiles. But I think there is still a lot of hand embroidery. It's just often for personal, like if somebody weaves their own huipil, then embroiders it themselves. Actually, one of my colleagues on our Guatemala staff was kind of showing, because we were all so impressed with this beautiful embroidery that she had around the neckline on a huipil she was wearing. And it was hand embroidered. She said it took her, I think, initially 3 months, but then something happened and she had to cut out a piece and re-embroider it. So overall, this huipil took like 8 months. And that was just the embroidery. I don't even think that's counting the weaving. So, and you'd get kind of these timelines like that, where you're hearing about how long it takes to make a piece. And it's just so impressive how much time goes into a huipil.
Thank you.
Great, thank you all. We probably have time for one more question if there's any last urgent and important question that anyone would like to ask. I see Linda waving your hand. I think she's trying to unmute.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so somebody mentioned crochet. What kinds of items do the people crochet?
So I think that was me. The crochet artisans that we work with at Mayan Hands, they mostly make kipot. We have a Judaica line, so they make kipot or yarmulkes that are hand crocheted. But we also have a bottle bag that they hand crochet. It wasn't a group that we visited on this last tour, but you never know. Again, these itineraries are subject to change. And I know that's kind of a product line that we're looking to expand. So keep an eye on Mayan Hands for more crochet products.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, all three of you, for sharing your wonderful and inspiring presentations with us today. Thank you, everyone who took time to be here with us. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.